Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 558, recording today, Wednesday, the 14th of November. We are a music technology podcast. We talk about synthesizers, controllers, software, live performance, studio stuff, all of the things, modular synthesis, all that kind of stuff. Before I start, I want to remind you of our gig that we've got in Bristol, Wednesday, the 24th of November. I will let Gaz take over from here because he's done a fantastic jingle.
Hello, Gaz here. Just want to tell you about the great Sonicstate live event that we've got planned on the 24th of November. That date again?
The 24th of November.
We got some special guests coming along. We've got Will Gregory from Goldfrapp, Adrian Utley from Portishead, Dave Spears from GeForce Software, and the inimitable Ty Unwin. They're going to be bringing along some of their favourite pieces of kit and giving little talks and demonstrations. But on top of that, we've got live performances from the battery-operated orchestra and Chris Calcutt, plus other special guests too. Now, it's starting 3 PM DBS in Bristol. Tickets are available now, but are extremely limited. If you can't join us in person, then please join us online. We're going to be streaming from 6:30 PM, and also there's going to be a social media wall, so your comments will be available for us all to see, so you can join in no matter where you are. Anyway, Sonicstate Live, what's the date again?
The 24th of November.
Come along if you can, or tune in.
It certainly is. I want to say thank you very much to Gaz for doing that. That was great. And there we go. That link. Actually, tickets are moving quite quickly now. So there's only 2 weeks to go, and there's only a few tickets left. So I know that's a classic sales tactic, but literally it is quite limited. So bit.ly/Sonic Live 18 if you want to go there. Well, anyway, so let's introduce our guests. Obviously, we have a full panel, a fulsome panel. Well, that first chuckle you heard there was Mr. Gaz Williams, who's in his garret in Bristol, his bass attic, where he looks like he's got the Medusa.
Having lots of fun with the Medusa. It's I think it's amazing. I really think it's amazing. I think it's such an original idea, you know, with the combination of the oscillators and all the different modulation routings, and how fast it is to set up modulation routings. Just hold it, hold the button and set the destination. All that kind of stuff means you can move pretty fast. The reason I've got it, well, I've been playing with it today, is connected with one of the topics later on. But there's many synthesizer options once you couple it with the performance stuff that you can do on the grid. Yeah, I think it's because it's been getting like quite mixed responses. Well,
as we've said, haven't we, that people tend, you know, you can't make it too different, otherwise people won't do it. But I did a full review of it as well, but I think you probably find it's had a firmware update since then, hasn't it?
Yeah, and this is running some beta software at the moment, and it's made a huge difference. It's so I think that their support of this, I think, is going to be really, really good. Their sequencer that they do has had loads of different sort of things happen to it over its lifespan so far. Yeah. So my thing, you know, I think it's going to be well supported. So I hope it does, because it's such an original prospect, really. I think the sequencer still needs a little bit more development. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
I bet it'll come though, because anyway.
Well, I could see what you've been doing for the last however many hours, but yeah, lovely to have you, Gaz. And
thank you.
And as ever, we've also got Mr. DivKid Ben from up there in Leeds, where he's obviously masterminding his single-handed takeover of the modular niche in YouTube and online. How are you, Ben? You well?
Good, yeah. I think that strategy's just worked like an idiot. That's all there is to it. There's not much mastermind, but yeah, I'm very well, thank you. In a bid to grab some gear and make some noise, I suppose I could twang some springs on a reverb, but I don't have a Medusa to tinkle on, unfortunately.
Never mind. I've got the I was playing a bit on the pre-show. I've got the modal sculpt here, which I'm really enjoying. I'm just reviewing that at the moment, which is very far from analog, but sounds very organic, and is nice. You have to stay tuned that, or watch the pre-show on the live stream uncut if you're watching this on the cut version, if that makes any sense. Duh. But Ben, lovely to have you, and I'm looking forward to your input a little bit later on. What have you been up to anyway? Have you got I mean, you say you've been working hard.
Yeah, just a ton of videos. It's now boxed back up, so I'm not going to grab it. But the Mothenzief Modular Stargazer, kind of drone synth, very little connection with the outside world, but I've really embraced that. It's been fun. There's an output, as you'd expect, and just a single expression input, which expects expression pedal. They sell these little LED jacks. It's a bit like having a theremin kind of on the side of the unit if you want to perform that way. It's been nice, but there's no volt proctive for the oscillator. It's all completely hands-on.
Sounds like the Russian thing. I can't remember what it's called now. It's completely gone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lyra.
Lyra 8, yeah.
But there's kind of no way to play it other than the knobs. You don't get those kind of. They're not pressure pads, are they? But
I see. Right.
Pads on.
Just on.
Yeah. So it is a bit strange, and the input for the expression controls the rate of the three LFOs, not the pitch. Because your first thought might be, oh well, we can kind of theremin the pitch or get some CV in, or no, there isn't. It's kind of a deliberate move to be awkward, I think, which is very much Mothenzief's approach. But it's been fun to kind of. I'm just trying to find
a picture of it so we got some context. There we go. That's it. No, that's not it. Get off. That's it there. Yeah, that's what it looks like. But this is clearly what it sounds like. Crikey. Oh, I'm gonna have to turn that off. That was a little bit. That rather took over there. It's a very intrusive bit of autoplay web audio. Not the done thing.
No, it's a bit annoying, true. But it's interesting because this oscillator hits. It's all digital. Hits a low pass filter, then a kind of bit crush section with aliasing and redux or downsampling and bit crush, then another low pass filter, so you can then control all that weird top end aliasing, and then a VCA that will distort, and you've got LFOs over the filters and the VCA. It's great, just very interactive. Drones, it's just a perfect kind of drone machine. It'd be great for sampling, to build a fit gritty bass library. It would be good kind of sample fodder, I think. Or
something which I may also add, you could put through our Freeze Machines live effects input, available at all good websites like ours just now.
Yes.
There, you see what I did there, Ben? I just, couldn't resist it. Couldn't resist it.
You'd have to put up with a pitch control going up, though. You couldn't kind of freeze a C and then go to put that third in and that fifth and build a chord. But it'd be interesting. That's kind of how I've been using it in the modular. Trying to freeze it in some sort of sampler, queue up some pitch change and build layers that way. It's just made me work differently. I've got to do the demo. So that initial kind of, it doesn't maybe do what everyone first thinks it will do, has forced me to embrace it, which has been really good.
Yeah, well, it is. It sounds very much like the Lyra 8 kind of concept, which is like, well, it's this way or no. Sort of like some other Swedish manufacturers like Electron. It's our way or the highway, but they take it even further by not having any standards. Well, Ben, lovely to have you, and we'll look forward to speaking in a bit. We've also got Mr. Dominic Hawken, who you may remember for a couple of weeks. He's no longer a Sonictalk virgin. Dominic's got his electronic music, very moody lighting there, Dominic. Although you haven't powered up your mod, it's not powered up, so there's no blinky lights.
It's all off. No, it's all off today. So it's all you've just got me. I thought I was the ultimate drone machine, Ben, actually, but we'll see how I get on. So it's all off. I've just been doing a bit of rewiring, and I just thought it's a bit too posh, too kind of showy, too flexy to have everything on today. So I've just got a couple of lights. Hopefully you can see me all right.
Yeah.
I've been. I was just trying to think what I've been up to. Continuing to do a lot of relaxation music and sounds, which has been fun for the app that I'm involved with, but also getting into a bit of DIY from old school studios. So the Spring Reverb reminded me. I just built a Spring Reverb with a preamp and some bits and pieces, because you can buy the tanks from eBay or whatever for about 15, 20 quid, different size tanks. And really what you need is a little preamp to amp the signal going in, and some kind of high impedance output to get into the desk. And they sound great, especially if you start filtering the input and the output a little bit. And also reamping stuff. A mate's got a 15-inch speaker cab that he uses, so I'm DJing or something. And so just taking sounds out of the computer or out of something else, sticking it out into the cab and then miking it up and recording it again, just to give it some movement and warmth actually in the room. You could even do it with your studio monitors if you want. If you're playing stuff, keyboard pads are really good for it. And what else? Oh yeah, echoes up behind me. up there, that Revox, it's an old Revox that I got, a Revox A from eBay ages ago, which you can use as a tape delay, obviously, like the Roland tape delays that you can get. You just put a signal into it and monitor it coming out. But I fitted a speed control that even does, this is too geeky, MIDI sync. You can actually feed the tempo into it.
Wow, that sounds impressive.
Which is really quite cool, because inside there's a little clock that literally just clocks. So if you start playing with that, and you can sync it up. It got a bit hot inside and blew a fuse, so I've just paused that for a moment. I've just got a twisty knob speed control. So yeah, it's been a bit of a DIY couple of weeks since I last saw you.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like a lot of fun. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the intro. We should mention that, of course, our sponsors of the prize this week are iZotope. You can win a copy of their fabulous RX7, which we've just used to great effect, because we had 2 mics when we record at the studio over there. There are 2 Omni mics, and sometimes, you know, you get a bit of bleed, and we wanted to get some separation. We just did the de-bleed, and it just basically cleaned up one of the vocals. And literally, I'm stood 2 feet away from a guy who had a slightly quieter voice. My voice is almost as loud as his, and I'm gone, and he's there. It's absolutely magical. So anyway, if you want to win that, stay tuned for a little bit later on. So let's see, what are we starting with? Let me see. Oh gosh, yeah, we had Cubase, didn't we? Cubase 10 has actually been announced today. I know I've dropped this in a little bit, but you know what? I was thinking about this, and I'm actually quite excited by Cubase 10, and I don't even use Cubase 10, and it reminded me of the days when I used to get excited about DAWs, and it seems to have dropped off a bit, that. But I think this is the video. This is Charlie McLean, who's got a fabulous studio in Berlin using Cubase 10. It's lovely, and this just basically sort of highlights the new features. But it's a nice track. This. Everybody's got a sub 37. It looks like. So new simplified side chaining. What else is there? There's some new. That's lovely information. MPE support, better MPE support, advanced MPE support even.
Alignment.
Audio alignment. I think that's coming up now. Yeah. This is supposed to be quite exciting, but we don't know what it is yet, because this is just a pre. When I put the show together, they hadn't actually announced it, so I didn't know what the features were. I had to scribble it down from all of the lower thirds here. Audio alignment. There's a new Vari Audio engine as well. Is it Vari Audio 3? What's it called?
Yeah, version 3, Vari Audio.
Latency monitoring. Sadly, it doesn't also come with a studio with a great aspect as this one, but, you know, maybe if you work hard enough, you'll end up being able to afford one. Yeah, so Cubase 10 just out. In fact, I was checking back, and it's just literally Cubase 10. There we go. Find out more. There it is. Looks like something went wrong. I'm guessing that's probably due to overload of traffic as everybody upgrades. I think it's about 85 quid up. I know. I'll come to you, Gaz, because I know you're an avid Cubase user, and you quite often do the upgrade reviews for us. I'm sure you'll be taking a look.
That's right. Yeah, and sadly, I was going to give a little hands-on report today, but the download, which is a 21.5 gigabyte download, just got to the end, and then it's something about exactly to do with the servers, you know, just so unfortunately I can't give a hands-on. However, what I know a few things about it that's worth mentioning. I think when they introduced the channel strip a few versions ago, the idea of that was actually really, really great. Just that you've always got a channel strip essentially, without having to sort of insert things. It's just always there, but you could swap things around, and there was a certain amount that you could do with it. But the channel strips had a massive upgrade this time, sort of I guess upgrade, but just straight away, I'm just thinking very smart move, because the way they've integrated it is very clever. So now they've expanded on that. I think it's going to make for a very nice workflow, just very integrated workflow. I did a project a couple of years ago. It was quite a big production for my standards, and I used. I've talked about this before, but I was just intrigued to see what would happen if I did a whole album project and only used the in-the-box Cubase plugins without any third-party plugins. An album come out sounding great. So I think the plugins are really excellent. It's so easy to overlook the stuff that comes pre-installed. But so the fact that they've kind of reworked that channel strip, though, I think is going to be a really big thing. The alignment thing is it looks like a vocal line if you've
that's actually really useful. That's just so useful.
And it's quite cool. It looks really simple. You choose your track that you want it to align to, choose the other track, and then you've got a percentage amount of just how much it snaps to it, and you can. Oh,
so it actually will do the. It's not a question of just taking a load of stems and making sure they start in phase. It's actually for lining up vocals and takes.
It uses the audio. It conforms it. It uses the audio.
Okay.
And you can. There's a few things that you can weight the algorithm towards sort of speech, and I think there's a few options that you've got. But you can decide whether you want it to try and move things in time rather than time stretch. So
right, okay, so slice it rather than stretch it.
Yes, yeah. So, but it's all pretty much what clicked and you're done. So obviously, I've spent, gosh, if I added it up, years of my life doing vocal comping and editing. So this is something that I'm just really going to relish. I mean, I think, given the nature of the VariAudio 3 algorithm, do you remember when we did the feature when VariAudio 2 came out, and we did a feature with me and you, Nick, and do you remember we slowed the BPM down to like 2 BPM, and the regular artifacts that you'd expect to hear at something like that were just surprisingly not. You had incredible tone no matter how fast or slow that you would move an audio file. So I've got high hopes that VariAudio 3 is going to be like. So
do you I could just stop you there. I mean, do you think? I mean, this goes out sort of wider. I mean, I don't know if any of you other guys are you Cubase users by any chance? Anybody?
Used to be, haven't for a long time. But I'd mirror what Gaz said about the time stretching, and this was quite a while back. But I remember at the time, did an act of something, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of usable. I'm not going to have to do some, make it something else, filtering some sound out, and I'm just looking at the channel strip stuff now. A lot of the updates look great, really good, but I've not used it for a while.
I don't know about you, Dominic. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? There used to be back in the day, you were quite. I mean, I remember we used to get Pro Tools free because you could run Serato pitch and time in it. So you'd actually buy, you'd have alternative DAWs because there were certain things that you could do in it better than the DAW that you maybe used every day. And it feels like Cubase is starting to occupy that space a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a user back in the day. I think when 3 came out, which was the first one with the kind of timeline window on it. I worked with them actually, coding some stuff for them, some CD ripping elements that they put back in the very early days. But then I jumped. When Apple bought CLAD, didn't they, or whatever they were called at the time, and then created Logic, I jumped ship to Logic at that point. They were an amazing company, and I'm sure they still are, actually. Very, very independent, unique. They were writing the software, pressing the software, distributing it, rack out, and the van would come up at the end, fill up with boxes, and it would go out. And that is quite exciting, actually. I've been looking to try and find stuff that's going to change my workflow a bit. And I do know Logic. I'm very comfortable with using it, but partly getting into some of the external stuff like the Deluge or whatever, and some of the little modular stuff is forcing me to kind of think differently. And I'm creating different sounds and tracks now. And that's one thing that might entice me. It is PC only still, right? Isn't it? Or
no,
is
but no,
it's Mac as well.
Mac and PC, yeah.
Well, there you go.
It's been for a while, yeah.
Really, I mean, I completely lost touch with it, and just jumped in with Logic. So yeah, that is quite tempting. I mean, the stock Logic plugins are good as that. Do you know if it supports VST2, or have they dropped it completely in 10?
I think that's what that was news, wasn't it? That they were going to drop the VST2 support by a certain time. I don't remember exactly when that was. Perhaps the chat room will remember, but I think we discussed it some time back, but I can't remember what the actual deadline was. But yeah, I mean, it's just so that everything will be 64-bit and all of that stuff. You can upgrade from 9.5 for 85 quid, 136 from 9, and cross-grade from artist. And it seems like, I suppose, I don't know, Gaz, do you think it's a big enough upgrade? I mean, because a 10.0 is traditionally the big one, and that people are already sort of moaning that it's perhaps not got these killer features. It's more iterative than big, but I don't know, because some of the other ones previously have been a little even more iterative, right?
Yeah, I mean, for probably about four or 5 years now, Steinberg have been doing this thing where there's a 0.5 paid upgrade, so it's virtually like a yearly upgrade with Cubase now, where I think it's more or less a 2-year period between big ones and a 0.5 halfway through. So I guess it's almost like not a subscription model, but like the 0.5 upgrade being a paid, like yearly installments. I think that possibly has meant that the abundance of features you get maybe get spread across those stages, but and traditionally, the 0.5 upgrades always provided loads of cool stuff. So I think it's got so much stuff in it. I remember when Reason 10 came out or something, we were talking about the advert was just going more and more and more and more. And I think it's more like taking what's there and just fine-tuning it, honing it, like I mentioned with the channel strip, making the channel strip really look very appealing. And it's easy to get complacent about things, but I mean, to the cost of like the vocal line or something like that, a third-party piece of software, you would probably pay what you would pay for the upgrade or more. So I guess
so
how
maybe
important
seems. No, see, I guess the thing is if whether you're a pro user or an occasional user. If you're an occasional user, you may not want to go for the upgrade features. You might hold off for a while and upgrade later. But yeah, I suppose. But it's now, and their servers are crushed at the moment, which is quite unusual. Usually that doesn't happen, and it must be some extraordinary scenario, because I can't imagine. It's only an extra 5 gigabytes of content, so I'm guessing you download all of the additional content that comes with it, and that just takes it up to a decent amount. So that's kind of the way it goes, I suppose. But what can you say? Right, okay, let's get on to something else. This is actually, did I make a video? Yes, there's a no, this video here. This is Raoul's World of Synths presents, and this is audio modulation, AM synthesis technique, and this is more of a technical than a musical display of how you would use one LFO to modulate the amplitude, so AM modulation rather than FM modulation. We're quite familiar with that FM modulation, but if you modulate amplitude at audio rates, you get a different sort of set of tones, and sort of a bit more discordant, or you have to be more mathematically precise to get beautiful things out of it. And this was one of the things I brought up that DivKid Ben said, no, you can make it sound. That's how I tempted him onto the show by saying, no, it just makes a load of tot noise. But and it's interesting. And this was actually inspired by, I found an article on Sound on Sound, which is by Gordon Reed, who is Sound on Sound's kind of synthesis specialist, and he's written, as is his way, a very specifically technical and very fulsome explanation of how you use AM modulation. I seem to remember what I like the amplitude modulation for that yo-yo sound when you modulate the depth. So if you modulate the amplitude depth of a filter at audio rates and you modulate that, you get a very unique filter sound. But I'm guessing if you're doing it with pitch, there's other side of things that you could do. So I wanted to sort of start with that AM as a concept, and then maybe kind of move on to what's the latest synthesis trick you learned. But we'll start with Ben. So, Malort, if you'd like to make the case for AM and how you could use it musically, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, well, like FM, it's just about getting it in tune. It certainly can be dissonant, which can be great for percussion. It's not particularly tuneful, but get that through a VCA, nice tight envelope. You've got a nice clangorous percussion sound. But unlike analog FM, which to me makes it safer for kind of jam wave or studio, you don't get that pitch drift. Like when you've got two oscillators, one frequency modulating the other, you're turning up that depth of modulation and that pitch just starts to come up, which, if you're playing against anything else in tune, is like someone going up to the guitar and turning the machine head slowly up while you're playing, which is just horrible. AM won't do that, but it's just about getting the oscillators in tune. And if you can make the modulation track, so say you've got a saw wave going into a VCA, you've another oscillator, say a sine wave, if you can make them play the same sequence and then get them in tune, And like FM, octaves, fifths tend to work really well. You get some really gorgeous melodic kind of tones. But it's about that modulation tracking. If you get a nice tone and then start to sequence one of the oscillators, it's kind of all over the place because all the ratios are off.
Oh,
but it will be the same with FM.
Right. Yeah, so it's about getting the tracking of the modulation source and destination. Yeah, right, okay. Scale.
Or keep one oscillator droning and sequence the audio rate modulation, and you'll get different tones while the kind of bass pitch stays the same because you've left your input, you know, just droning with no control. I really like it. Something to check out, and I forget which album it is, but one of Nathan Moody's latest albums, All on Buchla, has a lot of really gorgeous synth tones. And I remember kind of going to compliment him and talk about this thing and try and embarrass him with some nice words and all that kind of thing. And he said, there's barely any FM on it at all. And I thought it was. I thought, oh, this is all Buchla, FM, West Coast kind of stuff. He said, no, it's all AM because of that tracking. It will play more melodically because I can push the modulation without any weird pitch drift that comes with it.
Ah, okay.
It's nice on LFOs as well. If you drop the rates right down, which is going to be my follow-on, what's the kind of nice tip you've had recently? If you want more complex modulation without, you know, some crazy digital modulation source, if you just run an LFO, you know, just standard low rate, sine, triangle, whatever, through a VCA and put another LFO to CV the level of the VCA, you'll get a more complex moving shape out of two very simple sources. And that works really well.
Ah, nice. Thank you very much, Ben. That's killed two birds with one stone. I think you can rest your case, my lad. I'll come to you now, Dominic, because you've got modular system behind you. Although I have to say there are no patch cables in it. That was a big mistake. You're going to get so much flack now. You need to put some quickly. But yeah, thank goodness for that. Yeah, there we go. And they're all used for routing amplitude modulation, no doubt, right? You're muted, by the way. Whoops. Take a drink, somebody.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they are. All I've ever done is amplitude modulation. No, not at all. Well, I was going to say most of the AM, I think I came from your school, is a little bit harsh and noisy, and that's a really good thing to know about because I've never attempted it at all. All this stuff is based on radio fundamentally. So your FM station is using FM radio frequencies, and AM stations using AM. There's not a lot of transmission styles left that we could use. There is a thing called sideband. I don't know what that would sound like when applied to synthesizers.
Oh, don't Roland have sideband filters on? They got some models on the System 8 which sound quite nice. Right,
it's AM, but you remove the carrier and you're left with the sidebands, and the sidebands are identical, so you can actually stick with the upper one or the lower one. And I have no idea what that would sound like when applied to audio. Ben, do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure, but thinking of sidebands, just a really quick thing on AM. If you're going into a VCA to do this, just an oscillator at the input, another one to control amplitude at audio rate, it's kind of half of a ring modulator. Because if a sine wave comes into a ring mod, you know, the level increases and then it flips as the wave goes negative. So you're getting kind of audio rate phase inversion. Because the VCA won't do negative gain, it's either 0 or up to whatever full level is, it rectifies the signal. So that sine wave goes up and then stops while the signal's negative, and then up and then negative. And that's where a lot of the kind of harshness comes from, because the simple sine wave's now lost its bottom part of its wave. So it's effectively sine, square, sine, or flat, 0 volt. If you had a ring mod, it would flip the phase as the wave went down, which would be a bit more musical in some cases. So there's anything you could do with a ring mod, you can kind of do on a VCA, but it'd be a different tone.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes much more sense.
That's your boy there.
The ring thing.
Yeah, that's a single sideband modulator. You could do ring modulation, but you can do the upper band or the lower band, and you can actually, you can take both side bands out independently as well.
Oh, well, there you go.
And it's a lot of fun. You can do all sorts of really weird stuff with it. And this one is quite interesting because but it's also got a tune control where it'll tune the modulator into whatever your incoming signal is. So you can get like a certain degree of musicality out of it. So maybe like your root is very strong, but everything off that then gets kind of crazy. But being able to have a certain amount of musicality with the tune thing, it really transforms it from the kind of more abstract sound effecty type thing into something approaching musical.
Right. Got you.
That's the problem.
Well, there you go.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, well, there you go. That's hang on, let me just carry on.
Yeah, you go.
That's it for transmitting. I think if you're applying radio style stuff back into synthesis, there isn't really anything else, because since everything else has gone digital, all they're doing is transmitting ones and zeros, which is very similar to what they're doing in synths and stuff now. So I don't think there's any more left. I mean, from my side of things, I only really use the modular. I was just going to say that the synth tricks that you're talking about, because I'm by no way an AM synth specialist or understanding things. The modular I kind of bought to use as an effects rack. The top bit there is one of the Dopfer systems, which I bought when it first came out, and that got me kind of into it, and that is an instrument. But everything below is a relatively recent acquisition, and I fundamentally bought it to affect things. So there isn't any oscillators in there. There's a couple of filters, really good delay, thing called a morphogene that kind of just changes subtly samples by stretching, like a granular synthesis sampling thing. And I don't really tend to use it as an instrument. And that's one of the tricks that I've found, is taking stuff out of the computer or whatever and sticking it through there, be it a vocal, synth, bass, or whatever. And with this thing, I think we touched on a while ago, this Expert Sleepers interface, and it's an ES8 there, but basically you can send stuff directly out of the computer like an audio interface, but it comes out at the right level for the modular. And modulars take a higher audio level, so they need a bit more punch, and they deliver a higher audio level out the other end. But that the Expert Sleepers handles all of that. And really, rather than saying, here's an instrument, I'm going to make some noises with it, I've said, here's a really weird and wonderful effects machine, and let's see what we can do to the noises that we've already got. And that's been good. I mean, I will get into using it, I'm sure, but I've always viewed personally modular as an instrument, and there's some amazing modular performances by people who can take this instrument and play and do some amazing stuff with it, just in the same way that there's some amazing pianists that can play an instrument and make some amazing piano music. I've always seen it as one in the arsenal of kit that you've got. Yeah. So much the same as I probably wouldn't sit down and give you a fantastic rendition on my Matrix Brute, but it would make a bass line in conjunction with other stuff. So I'm not taking anything away from the modular guys, because I'd love to be able to do that stuff where you kind of ping a button. But for me, it's a instrument as part of everything else, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at. Oh, the other little thing was noise as a modulation source, and I don't know if that's widely used, but using a bit of white noise or whatever as a tiny bit of modulation source for something can lead to some interesting results.
Yeah, no, you get some lovely stuff. I've been using that on the Sculpt that I've got over there, because you can wave shape the one oscillator bank into noise, and when you FM with that, particularly when it's got a little bit of pitch left in it as well, you get some really lovely tones. All right, so Gaz, I mean, Amplitude, you've done your ring thing there, but I mean, you've just been getting into Medusa. I mean, have you found any little synth techniques that you kind of go, oh, that's something I've not tried before?
Oh, with this thing, loads of that. I think when you use this it's got like a kind of play mode here between monophonic, paraphonic 1 and paraphonic 2. On the paraphonic 1 setting, essentially you've got pairs of oscillators, one analog oscillator and one digital oscillator as pairs, and you've got like 3 voice paraphonic. I'm finding all sorts of interesting stuff there with sending audio rate modulations to the pitch controls of either of one of the pairs of the oscillators, but actually using the mixer as a performing with the mixer, and oodles of reverb, of course.
Yeah. Well, that goes without saying. Yeah.
Yeah, which always feels so luxurious to do that, but yeah, because I mean, some people were criticizing the Medusa as sounding too dry, and I was thinking, well, it is.
Well, it hasn't got any effects. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah. So's the Jupiter 8, you know, but yeah. No, that's interesting. I'll tell you one thing that I was doing, because you've got 6 oscillators, you can use LFOs to modulate different pitch intervals that come in and out of a voice or envelopes. So you can create these incredible harmonic sort of evolutions on a single note.
Yes. And looping envelopes, but you've got 5 envelopes, but you've got a delay control of each envelope. So actually using a delay control as a performing tool, flicking on between the different envelopes and having lots of different
things coming in a different, that's really good.
And messing with the delay. That's something I haven't done before.
Well, the one I've did, and again, this was on the Sculpt, and it's not something that I think I've done it before, where basically all of the LFOs are, you can have single shot mode, and if you set a single shot LFO to random, and so every time it's triggered on a note on, that voltage or that control voltage every time a note on is effectively a completely random and unique voltage. So you could use that to randomize things from there. So every time you play a note, something random gets sent out. So that could be to a balance of oscillators. It could be to, you know, maybe a slight variation in the decay level or whatever. So you get that kind of, particularly if you're doing fast sequence, if you've got a little bit of random there, then you're ending up with it not sounding very machine. It won't sound machine gun. It'll actually move around a bit. You know, every time a note's triggered, it's a random voltage. So that's a trick that I learned, that I implemented quite recently, and I thought that worked quite well. And you could do that with the position of, say, a waveform as well, if you've got to continue various waveforms. So the timbre will, you know, you don't have to make it super wide. It could be quite narrow, but lots of variation between that gives you this sort of sense of sounds more analog because you're introducing error effectively, if that's how you want to use it. So that's a good one.
Can I just say another one I was just doing with this one was with that play mode, and people who use Volcas, like the Volca keys, will certainly, and the Volca bass will know this kind of trick, is when you change from like monophonic and then have the sequence going and then switch it back and forward, the play mode, so the sequencer is contracting in and out from a monophonic line into a paraphonic line with lots of harmonies, but just sort of using that as a performance tool, you know, sort of like bringing it in.
Oh, now we're rocking. Ben, I think you obviously got a little bit of a spark there as well.
Yeah, no, the thing you said about random, that's the first patch. I tend to do a lot of one-to-one Skype sessions with people and things, and I often get people saying, I've watched these shows you've done on random, but I don't like random bleeps and bloops.
Oh, how about random video pauses? There we go. Try again.
So people said, you know, I'm not into this random bleep and bloop stuff, so I don't want any random modulation. It's exactly what you said. It's almost like a humanizing voltage to apply to things, and not clocking a sample and hold, doing it per gate, or like you said, with a one-shot LFO per key press or per MIDI note or something. And if you've got lots of random sources, you can make some gorgeous and lifelike things. You know, imagine a bass player, Gaz, as great a player as Gaz is, he can't play every single machine like every single time. Nor can a drummer hit that snare drum exactly at the same velocity in the same place every time. So if you've lots of random modulation for, like you said, pulse width, for wave shape, cutoff, decay time, level, resonance, and just really tiny little bits, lots of attenuation, repeated notes sound really musical, you know, kind of chuggy 16th note bass lines and things like that.
Yeah, using a machine to not sound like a machine. There we go. That's a way to do it. All right, I think that's probably enough on that topic. I'm going to just now bring in a message from iZotope, because we now have, obviously, this is the portion where they get to give away a copy of RX7, which I will pass this on now. This is what RX7 can do for you.
RX continues to be the industry standard and leader in audio repair for music and post-production. And with RX7, we've introduced groundbreaking new ways to quickly and easily fix and manipulate audio. Take the game-changing Repair Assistant, an intelligent helper that can detect noise, clipping, clicks, hum, and more. Also new in RX7 is Music Rebalance, a powerful source separation tool. Drums too loud? Vocals not loud enough? Let's fix that. You can also create instrumental versions of songs by removing the vocal elements. You can now alter the pitch without affecting the timing of your audio, and conversely, alter the time without affecting the pitch with the new variable time and variable pitch modules. Using the new dialogue contour, you can improve the performance of a line or even create a new performance by altering the pitch contour of the dialogue, therefore adjusting the intonation of the speaker, and introducing Dialogue Dereverb, a module powered by machine learning to reduce the presence of reverberations around dialogue. RX7, a new frontier in audio repair.
Of course, all you have to do is head over to iZotope.com and check out RX7. And we have a winner from last week's competition. The winner is, in fact, I've done this with I thought I'd throw the tweet up this time. This is LCarl13. Oh, great random number generator. Select my number. Well, you know what? It did. So you won last week's competition. And if you want to enter this week, we're looking for, and this is what happened to us, save the session with as one hashtag, and the other hashtag is RX7. So the first hashtag is hashtag save the session with, that's one word, and the hashtag RX7 as another hashtag to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's save the session with and the hashtag RX7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's a Twitter competition, and we could do a search based on that, and then we pull all the winners in, and the random number generator takes over from there. So once again, we thank them for their sponsorship of the show by providing a great prize. Actually, at this point, I meant to mention this at the beginning of the show, but obviously terrible fires on the West Coast. I mean, we're going to NAMM in January, and it's going to be a very different landscape. And there's been a lot of disruption to West Coast music community. Lots of people lost their houses, studios. A chap called Richard Gibbs lost his Malibu home to the fire. I mean, fortunately, loss of life has been, while great, it's not been as huge as the disaster would be. So condolences to anybody who's suffering and perhaps having their creative lives completely disrupted. I mean, obviously it's nothing compared to loss of life, but it still can be very it's a very traumatic thing. So all props and good vibes to you lot out there, and we'll pray for rain for you. Okay, well, let's have a look what's next. Yeah, the Groove Agent 5 thing, I didn't really kind of go into that. That's part of the Cubase that's part of the Cubase upgrade. I mean, you get SE5, Groove Agent SE5. Groove Agent 5 came out just previously, which is the sort of full version, which is massive sound library, massive sort of grooves, and are able to mix completely different kits up. And these things are, they're quite long in the tooth. We've got to version 5. There's obviously the Stylus RMX. There's BFD, which is another great drum kit and groove generator that people use a lot. Toontrack, Easy Drummer, Superior Drummer. So like I said, Spectrasonic. I just wondered, because I always found that people would say, "Oh yeah, I use it." I know Dave Spears uses Stylus RMX, and people use BFD. I wonder if any of you guys use that kind of sort of the rhythm section plugin that like Groove Agent supplies, just to sort of get things going, because the amount of tweakability and realism is really huge now. I'll come to you first, Gaz. I mean, I know you've got access to real drummers and stuff, but I know you're a Cubase user. I mean, we've looked at Groove Agent, hasn't it? And it is quite impressive, isn't it? I mean, are there any others that you use, or I mean, where do you find them? Because people tend to think of them a little bit as sort of auto accompaniment, but they're really not about that, are they?
I use Machina inside of Cubase a lot, so the Groove Agent thing, well, but Groove Agent does have like a particular advantage if you use it inside of Cubase, in that you can drag things from the timeline directly into it and have this relationship there. That's I know some other things. I think Impact XT in Studio One version 4 does a similar thing. So having it integrated into the DAW itself has lots of benefits. And Groove Agent is actually there's lots of innovative things in Groove Agent that may be easy to overlook, and in many ways it does offer a very to a full-blown thing like Machina. So and that's just referring to the SC version. Obviously the full-blown one, as you mentioned, it's an enormous library, I think, with that one now,
and all that sort of multi-mic mixing and switching out drum. I mean, it's really clever stuff.
Yeah, I remember getting Superior Drummer 2, gosh, a long time ago now, probably what, 10 years ago or something, when maybe a bit less, and just being utterly overwhelmed by the amount of different mics they'd put up, and the mixing desk was incredibly complex. And I sort of recoiled a bit from that sort of stuff, I suppose. I do I love working with real drums, so that will always be my first port of call. But actually, I find now using simplified versions of those drum libraries, like the ones that are part of Machina, like the Abbey Road ones, but just in the kind of Machina workflow, I find those kind of things more satisfying for me, because I can just it's just, there's a minimum amount of fuss with it.
Yeah, because I mean, you could spend almost as long tweaking one of these plugins to get the drum mix right as the real thing.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing. I think for me, if I was going to put the time in, I would do it with real drums. But so if I'm not going to be using real drums, I'll actually want to use the benefit of using the computer for the convenience side of things, you know. But Groove Agent, as I say, is I really liked the very first ever Groove Agent, because it was done like a kind of old-fashioned drum machine, and you had like a slider for different genres, and a bit kind of corny in some ways, but I really liked it. That was before it sort of transformed into the more MPC-like kind of workflow, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But definitely want to, again, if you're a Cubase user and have overlooked just the SE version, definitely check that though, because that's incredibly powerful just in its on its own. Yeah.
Dominic, are you? I mean, stuff I've seen your jams they're very much sort of constructed kits, so less of the sort of real live drum. But there must have been kind of gigs in the past where you know, as with all of us, you know, usually when you're asked to remix things, you remix them with a kind of electro kit or a kit that has a sort of a now sound. But quite often you might need an authentic sounding real drum and don't have the option to record them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan. A bit old school. It's a bit vegetarian sausage for me if you're trying to make real drum sounds like that. But absolutely, not everyone can go out and record a drum. Really good drummers are few and far between, I think. I mean, you can now send your tracks away and get remote sessions done with some really good drummers, which is worth thinking about. And their kit's obviously mic'd up perfectly, and they know how to get the best sounds, and that can be an alternative. But I haven't really. We tended to do a lot of programming on the productions and remixes that I did, but we used percussion live, which makes a massive difference. Amazing percussionists called Louis Jardine, who worked with Trevor Horn.
Yep, he's the guy, isn't he? Yeah, Grace Jones.
You know, yeah, I mean, he's just amazing, and he's really good for his stories as well. You just get him in and get him to play for half an hour, and then get him to sit down for the rest of the session and tell you the stories that he knows. But that made a huge difference. I have used the dub stuff that I was doing, not so much but real drum samples that Matty produced, who's a really amazing sort of dub guy, where they'd sampled really lots of mics, as you say, a really nicely laid out kit with different miking and different velocities, and that made a huge difference. But I'd always try and steer away actually from trying to make pretend live drums and go and use something else, you know. I think ultimately that sounds better. It's like when the drum machines first came out and everyone said, well, drummers will be out of business, but obviously, you know, clearly drum machines sound like drum machines and drummers sound like drummers. That said, great tool for songwriting. If you're just sitting in a room and you want to throw something together, there's always a danger, certainly with me, that you get the old faithful sounds up, the old faithful patterns up, and you're not really starting from a spark. And so if you throw something together on one of those and start, you know, generating a few little fills and throws and different sounds, and I think that can probably spark a little bit of enthusiasm and a new songwriting ability. But they'd always end up getting replaced, and they'd normally, in my book, get replaced by program stuff rather than your vegetarian sausage, if you like.
Fair enough. Ben, I know you are actually a drummer, so you know, you probably got mixed feelings about it. But then, you know, recording your own kit, I know you got electric kit, so.
Yeah. Well, the last kind of big lot of gigging was all MIDI kit. That'd probably be my thing. Coming from playing drums, I'd probably MIDI it into some sort of contact library. You know, great. There's a ton of really good contact libraries, and then I've got the advantage of being able to change the feel if I want afterwards. But I really like them. We've working in college. Well, not anymore, but the job I had in college, Logic's drummer was very useful. And it's a little bit kind of cheesy, and I was a little bit snobby about it, I guess. Someone would go, oh, I'm using this, and I'm like, what is it? And you look at it, and it's, oh, they're using James, R&B session drummer, or go pick Rob, the 80s glam rock superstar or whatever, but just for them getting ideas going. And I think for people writing that don't program drums or don't have a drummer to hand, to just be able to move a slider for a fill or for a pattern to be busier or louder or quieter or more dynamics, less dynamics, I think they're great tools. And a lot of them, you know, you can kind of tell what they are at the end of the day. I would want to replace them, but yeah, I think they've got their place. Actually recording a kit, if I didn't have the MIDI kit, I probably would use it. Just a case of I need to just get a groove in this because I want to lay another part down, a guitar part or something. Because, you know, we don't all have a kit mic'd up and ready to go.
No, well, that's very true, yeah. Very true. I mean, I know a lot of people, or some drummers anyway, use electronic kits with stuff like BFD, where they can just build the kit they want. And I don't know whether many people are using that live, because, I mean, obviously that sort of might be a bit counterintuitive. But, I mean, you imagine a Mac Mini with BFD on it and a multi-output kit where you've just got kick, snare, and a stereo mix out to front of house. You know, you've got a pretty realistic, and they're getting so good now. It's usually the cymbals where they really die, or where you're sort of hitting toms, you're getting that machine gun effect. But that stuff is almost a thing of a past now. I mean, that doesn't really have.
We had one sounds for a while, and that was BFD, maybe version 1 or 2. I just have to move over. I was using Ableton, all electronic kits we'd built up, a little bit kind of Massive Attack-ish style-wise, but there's just one sound that needed acoustic sounds, and it was, do we have the kind of crappy one that's in the... Do we just use BFD for a track? Ran okay. So,
yeah. Sorry, we're losing a little bit of bandwidth there. Hopefully, it'll the pipes will grease up nicely, and we'll get back to that. So,
what's the thing, Nick, with round robin sampling? There's something about, like, if you hear the same sample again, exactly the same sample again within a sort of period of time, it sort of jars. We kind of notice it, even though so you have to go around.
I don't know. Is there like a psychoacoustic rule that says it has to be more than 9? Or, I mean, there quite possibly is, you know.
Right.
For the untrained ear, I'd imagine, yeah.
Sorry, it depends how fast they come round. I was talking to Mark Verbos about an old Buchla random generator, and we won't get back into that, but that was a preset number of values. And he said even when there's 256 of them, if you're firing away a machine drum with it, you start to hear the pattern emerge. And you're right, Gaz, with the round robin, it's how fast it's played. You know, if you're doing a snare roll and there's only 8, well, you might get 8 notes within 2 beats, or a bar, or 1 beat if it's a 30-second note burden. You do hear it. And I don't know how you get around that. But I guess if it's played, you'll also be triggering multiple velocity layers as well.
So yeah, you
kind of... Yeah, I guess.
I did an interesting experiment. I took a 1-bar loop from my Vermona DRM, just a very, very simple boom bap kind of sort of pattern. And then I recorded it for like about 3 minutes playing the same pattern. Then I copied and pasted the loop so you could toggle between just the looped one or the one of the same pattern playing, and just ask people which one do they prefer. Listening to the same pattern with us, and everyone absolutely prefers the non-looped one. And it's just quite interesting because that's obviously an analog drum machine. So
you get you will get variations. I mean, MIDI's got you know, plus or minus 10 milliseconds or more.
If you line up the beats, ostensibly they're the same length and attack. You know, everything is the same, but when you zoom into the waveform at a sort of like and looking at it at a sample level, you can see they are quite different. So again, that thing of just
randomization, folks.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I'm feeling a show title going on. I can't think what it is, but randomization.
Randomized vegetarian sausages.
Randomized vegetarian sausage. Yeah, randomized vegetarian sausage. That could work. We'll have to see about that. But yeah, it's in there. It's written down. Thank you. That'll work as a starting point. Well, we've actually got
the sausage variations.
Enigma sausage. Yeah. Anyway, let's not go. So there were actually more topics, but we seem to have kind of got quite far in. Is there anything that anybody really wants to talk about that before we end the show? Did you just raise a finger there, Don?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on the randomization thing very quickly. I think it was an old soft cell trick back in the day, but we've been kind of reamping stuff, just re-recording stuff that's coming out through speakers. They used to put route the snare to a little speaker on the snare drum, and then mic the snare drum up underneath. So you actually got the impact of the sound triggering the I can't remember what they're, snares, aren't they, on the snare drum, and then mic that up, and then you get some variation in like that. Try and sort of think out of the box a little bit. So it's not variation in timing, but no two snare drum hits sound the same, particularly if your speaker's moving about a bit. So there are other ways of getting a little bit of ambience in there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that one's really nice when you send the snare back through a bigger drum, like the floor tom. So you kind of get the impact, the recorded sound of the whole snare drum, and you know the impact, the snare wires, the shell ringing, the whole lot back through another drum. And it almost on it, which is quite cool.
We lost you, and they're almost. You just say that last sentence again, then we'd be there.
It almost imposes another pitch on it because you run the whole snare sound and excite the lower tuned floor tom with it or something.
It's kind of like it's like real physical modelling, isn't it? I mean, it's remodelling the kind of
real convolution almost. Yeah.
Interesting idea. Randomized convolution. There's another possibility. Okay, well, we're getting loads of possible titles there. I think perhaps we might leave it because there's a couple of topics I can use for next week. Because this week, I mean, aside from Cubase, it's actually been quite a slow news week, which I guess we're heading up to. Is it Black Friday this Friday? Yeah, it is. So we're going to end up with there's a whole load of sales.
I wasn't sure if it was.
It is it? Right. Okay, I'll have to check that out. We'll be able to deal with that. Okay, well, I think on that note, we'll leave it for today. I would like to apologise. I forgot to press go on the Facebook record, but hey, you know, I'll upload it later. I'm sorry if anyone was waiting on Facebook for that, but you know where you can go to get it, you know, elsewhere. So hopefully you came over and it was all right. So I think we'll finish there. Don't forget, if you want to win a copy of the iZotope RX7, we're looking for the hashtag. This is via Twitter. The hashtag Save the Session With. That's one word, Save the Session With. And the hashtag RX7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. So good luck if you're going to enter that competition. And don't forget, if you want to get tickets to our Bristol gig, which is on the 24th, that's Saturday week of November in Bristol, Sonic Live at DBS Music Bristol, of course, bit.ly/Sonic Live 18 will get you there. And there are literally, we're down to the last few tickets. So it'd be nice to sell out, but you know, hey, there'll be plenty of people there anyway. But no, that's not what I'm supposed to say, is it? Buy the tickets, for goodness sake. They want to sell out. Right, okay. So, well, that's it for this week. But Ben, thank you very much for joining us and imparting your peculiarly modern knowledge as well as all your drum stuff. I hope your bandwidth is going to hold up long enough for you to be able to actually say goodbye. But we'll see. Somebody's downloading. Yep.
I'd lost you then, but yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's great as always. And chatting. Always
a pleasure to have you. Don't forget, check out Ben's stuff, a DivKid video on YouTube. Lots of stuff there coming and about to come, and also already up there. I don't know how many videos he's got. It must be in the hundreds, if not the thousands. So do check them out. Also, Dominic Hawken, thank you very much for joining us as well, taking time out of your schedule. I hope your Studio Rewire comes back all as you hoped it did. I guess that's the next test,
so.
Isn't
Fingers
it?
Crossed. Yeah,
were you wiring?
No, thanks for having me.
Do you go the EDAC route, or are you just going point to point?
Point to point and a big patch bay. Well, 3 big patch bays, actually.
Is that Bantam?
So, yeah.
TT patch.
Horrendously expensive way of wiring everything up, and then at least you sort of plug it and forget it. But yeah, the cables and all the rest. Anyway, that's another thing, isn't it? Maybe make a video about that. But no, thanks very much for having me. Really enjoyed it. Anytime. Look forward to the next one, I hope.
A pleasure having you as ever. And also Mr. Gaz Williams, who's there with his Medusa, where I think he'll be locked in Mortal Kombat with it. So do enjoy that. But hopefully we'll get time to talk. We need to have a meeting about our gig, because there's a lot of stuff to do still, but we're getting
there. I'm so excited about it, though. And yes, I mean, there are so few tickets, so please don't leave it too long. Don't be disappointed, because
because we've got a limit. We literally can't fit any more people in.
Yeah. So, but yes, thank you very much. Someone was asking about the Keytar review. That's imminent.
It is actually. I think. Let me see. Where is it? I've got. Let me see. There might be a little teaser I can play. Yeah. Would you like to see a little? We'll play out with a little teaser. But before we go, we'll say thank you very much, everyone. Well, no, actually, I'll play it first, and then we can get the reaction, because I think you'll find this quite enjoyable. This is the sort of cutaway rock and roll. This is how you might use a Keytar. We've got the dry ice out and everything. Go Gaz! Well, that's a little bit of a taster. I won't play it all because it's a 3-minute section, but that's going to appear in the video to just sort of, if you didn't know what you might want to use a Keytar for, there are some suggestions. So anyway. But folks, thank you very much for joining us. We'll wave our way out now. Thank you. We'll see you all next week. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.